You have been digging where you should not, Sophia. We know about the transfers. My son signed everything we asked. The accounts are no longer yours to touch. This family protected what is ours long before you showed up with your little paycheck. Keep pushing, and you will walk away with exactly what you brought in nothing. Daniel already chose. Hi, my name is Sophia Reynolds. I am 28 years old. That conversation happened in the kitchen of the house Daniel and I had bought together 2 years earlier. Helen Brooks, my mother-in-law, stood at the island with her arms folded, her voice flat and final. Nicole Brooks, my sister-in-law, leaned against the counter behind her, scrolling on her phone like she was checking the weather instead of watching my marriage get dismantled in real time. The papers Helen slid across the granite were already notarized. A joint brokerage account Daniel and I had funded together now listed only his name and Helen's as co-trustees. The transfer had gone through 3 days before I even knew the documents existed. I did not raise my voice. I picked up the top page, read the date stamp, and set it back down. My hands stayed steady. Helen watched me, the way someone watches a stray dog that might still bite. You can fight it in court, she said almost kindly. It will cost you more than the account is worth, and Daniel will not side with you. He understands loyalty. Nicole finally looked up from her phone. Some people just do not belong in this family. You made that obvious the day you tried to keep everything separate. I turned and walked out. I did not slam the door. I drove straight to the office, parked in the same spot I had used for 4 years, and went inside like it was any other Tuesday. My job at the investment firm was quiet work reviewing client portfolios, flagging unusual activity, preparing reports that went to people who made the real decisions. James Whitaker sat 2 desks over. We had worked on the same team for almost 3 years. He was the kind of colleague who noticed numbers that did not line up and never made it personal. That afternoon, I asked him to pull the last 60 days of activity on a personal account I still had access to view. I told him it was for a family matter. He did not ask questions. He just ran the query. 2 hours later, he walked over with a printed sheet folded in half. Sophia, this is not normal movement, he said quietly. Someone initiated a trustee change and a series of wires. The receiving account is tied to a holding company I have never seen on any client file. Do you want me to keep looking? I told him, yes. Then I went into the conference room, closed the door, and called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. I signed what my mother asked me to sign, he said before I could finish the first sentence. She said it was to protect the family if anything happened to me. It is still our money, just structured differently. Structured for who, Daniel? He was quiet for a long moment. For the people who were here before you. I hung up. I did not cry in the conference room. I sat there until the building emptied, then drove to the small apartment I still kept under my own name, the one I had rented before we married. I had never told Daniel I kept the lease. It had felt like insurance I would never need. That night, James sent me an encrypted file. The holding company that now controlled the account was registered in Helen's name, with Nicole listed as a secondary officer. The wires had started the week after Daniel and I closed on the house. Small amounts at first, then larger ones once the joint account was active. Nothing that would trigger an immediate alert, just enough to move real money over months. I printed everything. I did not call a lawyer yet. I wanted to see how far they would go if I stayed quiet. The next morning, Helen called me at work. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was almost pleasant. Sophia, we need to talk about next steps. Nicole is hosting dinner on Friday. Daniel will be there. It would be better if you came, and we handled this like adults instead of making it ugly. I deleted the message without replying. James came by my desk again before lunch. He looked uncomfortable. I pulled one more thing he said. The holding company made a large outgoing wire yesterday to an account in Nicole's name. It cleared this morning. I do not know what they are planning, but it moved fast once you found the first transfer. I thanked him. I told him I would handle it from there. He nodded and went back to his desk, but I could feel him watching me for the rest of the day. That evening, I drove to the house. Daniel's car was in the driveway. Helen's car was parked behind it. Nicole's car was at the curb. I parked on the street and walked up the front steps. I did not knock. I used my key. They were sitting at the dining table with takeout containers open between them. Helen looked up first. She did not seem surprised to see me. "You are early," she said. "I am not staying for dinner," I answered. "I came for the rest of the paperwork." Nicole set her fork down. "There is no paperwork left for you to see. Everything that needed signing is done." Daniel would not meet my eyes. He kept moving food around on his plate, like it might rearrange itself into an explanation. I placed the folder James had given me on the table. "Then you will not mind if I take this to the bank tomorrow and ask them to reverse the trustee change on an account that still lists my name as an owner." Helen's expression did not change. "You can try. The bank already has the updated documents. They will tell you the same thing I am telling you now. This is family business. You are not family anymore." I looked at Daniel. He still would not look up. "Daniel," I said. He finally raised his head. His face was tired in a way I had not seen before. "I did what she asked," he said. "She said if I did not, she would cut me off from everything the family still controls. The house, the accounts, my father left all of it. She said you would understand eventually, because you are practical." I picked the folder back up. "I understand perfectly." I turned and walked out. This time, I did lock the door behind me. In the car, I sat with the engine off for several minutes. The street was quiet. No one came after me. No one called. The only sound was the low hum of the streetlight above the windshield. I drove back to the apartment I had kept. I unlocked the door, turned on the single lamp by the couch, and sat down with the folder in my lap. The numbers were clear. The transfers were documented. The signatures were Daniel's. The only thing missing was my consent. I opened my laptop and started a new document. I did not know yet what I was going to do with it. I only knew I was finished pretending this was still a marriage I could save by being quiet. If you have ever watched the people you trusted most move money and loyalty behind your back while smiling at the dinner table, you already know the question that comes next. What exactly are you willing to lose to stop pretending it is still fixable? The next morning, the laptop screen was still open on the couch where I had fallen asleep. The document I started was only a list of dates and account numbers. I added one more line, the exact time Helen had slid the notarized papers across the kitchen island. Then I closed the file and called James Whitaker before I left for work. He answered on the first ring like he had been waiting. "I stayed late last night," he said. "There is a second layer. The holding company that took the first transfer also moved money into an account under Brian Cole's name. I do not know who he is, but the pattern matches the ones you asked me to flag. Brian Cole. I had met him once at a holiday party Helen hosted 2 years earlier. Daniel called him an old family friend who sometimes helped with investments. I had not thought about him since. "Send me what you have," I said. "Do not put anything on the company server." James was quiet for a second. "Sophia, if this is what it looks like, you should talk to someone outside the firm. I can give you a name if you want it." I told him I would think about it and hung up. I did not want to involve anyone else until I knew exactly how deep it went. At the office, I kept my head down and finished the reports that were due. Helen called my cell twice. I let both go to voicemail. The second message was shorter than the first. "Friday dinner is still happening. Daniel expects you there. Do not make this harder than it already is." I deleted it without listening to the rest. After work, I drove to the small coffee shop near the apartment where Laura Simmons and I sometimes met. She had been my roommate in college and was one of the few people from that time who still checked in. She was already at a corner table when I arrived 2 cups in front of her. "You sounded off on the phone," she said as I sat down. "What happened?" I told her the basics, the trustee change, the wires, Daniel signing without telling me. I left out James's name and the Brian Cole detail for now. Laura listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stirred her coffee for a long time. "That is a lot," she said finally. "But families fight over money all the time. Maybe Helen is just scared of losing control now that Daniel is married. Have you tried sitting down with her without the papers?" I looked at her. "She already moved the money, Laura. Sitting down is not going to bring it back." Laura nodded, like she agreed, but her eyes stayed on the cup. "Still, burning bridges with your husband's family is permanent. Once you do that, there is no going back to how it was." I did not argue. I finished my coffee and told her I had to get home. She hugged me at the door and said to call if I needed anything. The hug felt shorter than usual. When I got back to the apartment, Daniel was waiting outside. He had his hands in his pockets and looked like he had not slept. I unlocked the door and let him in without saying anything. I did not know they were going to move that much at once, he said, as soon as the door closed. Mom said it was just to restructure for tax reasons. Nicole handled the paperwork. I only signed where she told me to sign. I set my bag on the counter. You signed a document that removed my name from an account we both funded. You did not ask me once. He rubbed the back of his neck. She said if I did not do it, she would tell the rest of the family I was choosing you over them. The house we bought, the accounts my dad left, everything would get tied up in some trust I cannot touch. I panicked. I opened the laptop and turned the screen toward him. James found another transfer yesterday. It went to Brian Cole. Do you want to explain that one too? Daniel's face changed. He stared at the numbers like they might disappear if he looked hard enough. Brian is helping Mom with some real estate stuff. It is temporary. She said she would move it back once things settled. Settled how? He did not answer right away. Then he said, she wants you to sign a post-nuptial agreement, something that protects the family assets if we ever split. Nicole already has a draft. I closed the laptop. You told her no, right? Daniel looked at the floor. I told her I would talk to you. I walked to the door and opened it. You can talk to her on your own time. I am done talking tonight. He left without another word. I locked the door behind him and sat back down at the laptop. The list of dates was longer now. I added the conversation with Laura and the one with Daniel. Then I opened a new search and typed in Brian Cole's name. The first result was a small real estate investment group with an office in the same suburban area where Helen lived. The second result was a 10-year-old article about a disputed property sale where Brian Cole had been listed as a witness for the seller. The seller's name in the article was Helen's late husband. I saved the link. Then I called the number James had given me earlier for a lawyer he trusted outside the firm. The woman who answered said her name was Margaret Ellis, and she could see me the next afternoon if I could make it. I told her I would be there. The following day at the bank, I asked for Thomas Reed, the relationship manager, who had helped Daniel and me open the original joint account. He came out to the lobby looking uncomfortable. I cannot discuss specific account activity without both owners present, he said after I explained what I needed. I am still listed as an owner on the statements I received last month. I said, I just want to know when the trustee change was processed and who authorized it. Thomas glanced toward the back offices. The documents came in with Daniel's signature and a notarized request from Helen Brooks as the new co-trustee. We processed it because everything was in order on our end. If you have concerns, you should speak with your own attorney. I thanked him and left. On the way to Margaret Ellis's office, I stopped at a copy shop and made 2 sets of everything James had sent me. One set went into my bag. The other I mailed to the small post office box I still kept under my own name. Margaret Ellis was in her late 40s sharp and did not waste time on small talk. I laid out the timeline and the documents. She read through them once then again, more slowly. The trustee change itself may be difficult to unwind if the bank already accepted the new paperwork, she said. But the wires to the holding company and then to Brian Cole raise other questions. If those were done without your knowledge and the account was still jointly titled at the time you may have a claim, I will need to see the full statements and any communication from Helen or Nicole. I gave her the second copy. She flipped to the page with Brian Cole's name. Do you know how long your husband has been working with him? Daniel said he is an old family friend, I answered. That is all I have. Margaret made a note. I will run a basic background on the holding company and on Cole. In the meantime, do not sign anything else and do not discuss the account numbers with anyone at the bank or at Helen's house. If they contact you again, refer them to me. I left her office with a folder of next steps and a bill for the initial consult. On the drive back, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Helen, 1 from Nicole, a text from Daniel that just said, we need to talk before Friday. I did not reply to any of them. That night I met James at a diner 2 towns over. He had printed one more thing. The holding company made another small wire this morning, he said, sliding the page across the table. It went to a different account under Nicole's name. Same pattern, smaller amount. It looks like they are testing how fast they can move things now that you know. I stared at the numbers. They were small enough to look like nothing if you were not looking for them, large enough to add up over time. James waited while I read. Then he said, Sophia, whatever you decide to do next, you should do it soon. They are not slowing down. I folded the page and put it in my bag. I know. He nodded and changed the subject to work for the rest of the meal. When we left, he walked me to my car, but did not ask what I was going to do. I appreciated that. On the way home, my phone rang. It was Helen. I almost let it go to voicemail again, then answered. We are done waiting, she said before I could speak. Daniel told us you were talking to a lawyer. That was a mistake. If you want to keep anything at all from this marriage, you will come to the house tomorrow night and sign the postnuptial. Nicole has it ready. No more delays. I pulled over on the side of the road. Or what? Or we finish what we started with the accounts, and you get to explain to everyone why your husband's family had to protect itself from you. Your choice, Sophia. Tomorrow night. Do not be late. She hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand until the screen went dark. Then I opened the document on my laptop one more time and added the time of the call and what she had said. The list was getting long. I saved it, closed the laptop, and stared at the road ahead. They were not going to stop, and now they knew I was not going to either. I did not sleep much that night. Helen's words kept repeating. I called Margaret Ellis at 8 the next morning and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, then said she would prepare a formal notice to the bank and a demand letter for full accounting of every transfer. She also said I should not go to the house alone. I went anyway. I arrived at 7. Daniel's car was already there. Nicole's was parked at an angle like she had been in a hurry. Brian Cole's black sedan sat at the curb. I had never seen it at the house before. I parked on the street, took the folder Margaret had prepared, and walked up the steps. Helen opened the door before I could knock. She looked at the folder in my hand and smiled the same cold smile she had used in the kitchen. You brought paperwork, she said. Good. Nicole has the postnuptial ready on the dining table. We can get this finished tonight. I stepped inside. Daniel was standing near the fireplace with his arms crossed. Nicole sat at the head of the table with a stack of papers in front of her. Brian Cole was in the chair to her right, scrolling on his phone, like this was any other business meeting. Sit, Helen said. I stayed standing. I am not signing anything. Nicole pushed the stack toward me. It is simple. You agree that any assets acquired during the marriage stay with Daniel's family if things end. In exchange, we stop moving the accounts. Everyone wins. Daniel finally spoke. Sophia, just sign it. Mom said this is the only way to keep the peace. I opened my folder and placed the first page on the table. It was the printout James had given me showing the wire to Brian Cole's account. The second page was the background Margaret had pulled on the holding company. The third was the demand letter Margaret had drafted that morning. Brian Cole is not family, I said. He is the one who received the last transfer, the one that happened after you already took the joint account. Brian looked up from his phone. His expression did not change. That was a loan repayment. Nothing illegal. Helen's smile tightened. You are reaching, Sophia. Brian has helped this family for years. Daniel knows that. Daniel shifted his weight. He looked at the papers, then at me. I did not know about the Cole transfer. Mom said it was handled. Nicole laughed once short and sharp. You signed the forms, Daniel. Do not act surprised now. The room went quiet. Daniel's face went still. He looked at his mother, then at his sister, then back at the papers on the table. You told me it was just restructuring, he said quietly. You said Sophia would not even notice the small ones. Helen did not deny it. She simply turned to me. You should have stayed out of it. Now you have made it worse for everyone. I placed the last page from my folder on top of the others. It was the notice Margaret had prepared for the bank already signed by me, requesting reversal of the trustee change and a full freeze pending investigation. I had mailed the original that afternoon. This goes to the bank tomorrow morning, I said. Margaret Ellis filed the initial paperwork with the state this afternoon. If any more money moves, it will be documented as a violation of the joint ownership that still existed when you started. Brian Cole stood up. This is a waste of time. Helen, we are done here. He walked out without looking at anyone. The front door closed behind him. Helen's voice dropped. You think a lawyer and some printouts are going to change what this family decides Daniel will not choose you over us? He never has. I looked at Daniel. He was still staring at the papers. He did not move toward me. He did not speak. I already chose, I said. I am done choosing silence so you can keep taking. Nicole stood up fast. You are going to regret this. When the rest of the family hears what you did? I do not care what they hear, I said. I am not coming back here. I am not taking your calls. If you need to reach me, you go through Margaret Ellis. That is the only boundary I am giving you. Helen stepped closer. Her voice was low and even. You will be alone. Daniel will not wait for you to come to your senses. Laura already knows. Which side is the smart one? You are throwing away everything for pride. I picked up my empty folder. I am keeping what is left of myself. That is enough. I walked out. No one followed me. I drove straight to the apartment, locked the door, and sat on the couch with the laptop. I opened the document I had been adding to for days and typed the final line, "They will not stop unless I make them stop." I made them stop. The next morning, Margaret called. The bank had acknowledged the notice. The trustee change was under review. Brian Cole's account had already moved the money again, but the paper trail was now permanent. Helen and Nicole would face questions if they tried anything else. Daniel had not called. Laura stopped replying to my text 2 days later. When I finally reached her, she said she was sorry, but she could not get in the middle of family business. She wished me well. That was the last time we spoke. Daniel moved his things out the following weekend while I was at work. He left a note on the counter that said, "Only I am sorry I threw it away." 3 weeks later, Margaret told me the bank had reversed the trustee change on the remaining balance. The amount was smaller than it should have been, but it was mine again. She asked if I wanted to pursue the rest through court. I told her no. I had what I needed to start over. Anything else would keep me tied to them. I filed for legal separation the next month. Daniel did not contest it. The in-laws never reached out again. The house we had bought together went on the market. I took my half of the proceeds and put it into the account that still carried only my name. I kept going to work. James Whitaker never asked what happened. He just nodded when I thanked him for the files and went back to his own desk. I ate lunch alone most days. It was quieter than I expected. Some nights I still woke up thinking I heard Helen's voice on the phone. The feeling passed faster each time. I stopped checking my blocked calls list. I stopped explaining to anyone why I no longer went to family events that were not mine to begin with. The document on my laptop stayed closed after that last line. I did not need to add anything else. The list had done what it was supposed to do. It had shown me exactly where the line was and that I was the only one who could draw it. I am still alone in the apartment I never gave up. The city outside the window keeps moving. I go to work, come home, pay my bills, and sleep through the night more often than not. Some people would call this losing. I call it finished. I stopped carrying the weight of being the person who kept the peace no matter what it cost her. That peace was never real. It was just silence dressed up as loyalty. Letting it go did not bring me a new family or a victory parade. It brought me a door I could lock and a phone that stayed quiet unless I chose to answer it. That is the only peace I trust now. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever kept showing up for people who only kept taking you, already know the question that matters. What was the exact moment you realized the cost of their version of peace was higher than the price of walking away?